What's up guys, my name's Brandon and the iPhone XR was released over a year ago now, and even though it was originally bashed for its LCD display, it went on to impress and become Apple's top selling iPhone quarter after quarter. And for most of 2019, I actually used the iPhone XR alongside my iPhone XS Max, and to my surprise, there were even times where I just flat out liked using the iPhone XR better than my iPhone XS Max. So in this video, I just wanted to let you guys know how the iPhone XR is doing now, how it's held up over time, and just my overall thoughts on the phone in 2020 and beyond. And I'm also going to be comparing it to the iPhone 11 a lot throughout this video, since these two are very, very similar phones, and you may yourself be trying to decide between these two as for which one you want to purchase. Today's video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community that has thousands and thousands of classes on every topic from iOS app development to illustration and graphic design to how to chop like a chef, all for less than $10 a month. So click the link in the description below to get 2 free months of Skillshare Premium on me. So anyways, the iPhone XR was Apple's budget-friendly iPhone that was released in October of 2018, of course just 1 month after the release of the iPhone XS and iPhone XS Max. And of course there's a lot of hype for this device since it was a slightly cheaper version of the iPhone XS and XS Max, but with the same internals as those flagship phones. But there was also a lot of people, and I'd say even the majority of people, who were not impressed when Apple revealed that the display on the iPhone XR would be less than 1080p. And that display, of course, is the 6.1-inch LCD display with a resolution of 828 by 1792 at 326 pixels per inch. And that's exactly the same screen as the iPhone 11, by the way. So the same people that were complaining about that, thinking that the screen was going to get better over time. Nope, the iPhone 11 has the exact same screen as the iPhone XR. But of course, just as people always do, they overreacted. They quickly looked at that 326 pixels per inch number and just made the assumption in their head that the display is terrible. And I remember people saying, oh, it's the same display as the iPhone 4. Apple is crazy to sell this phone for $750. And I saw people saying that everywhere, here on YouTube and forums, on Twitter, everywhere people were saying the display is terrible and they should not be selling this for $750. But the thing is, the display wasn't and still isn't bad at all. It's actually very impressive that an LCD panel can look as good as it does on the iPhone XR. And unless you have it right next to an OLED screen, you're not going to think that the display is subpar, let alone just outright bad. I still enjoy watching YouTube videos, Twitch streams, Netflix, all that fun stuff on the iPhone XR, and I'm able to watch all that stuff in 1080p quality. I know the screen is not exactly 1080p, but you do have the 1080p option inside of YouTube. And honestly, when you set this right next to like the iPhone 11, there's absolutely no difference in quality, no difference in brightness, colors, anything. So if you're looking to buy the iPhone 11 or the iPhone XR and you care a lot about the displays and how videos and picture looks, you're not going to notice any difference between the two. So you should definitely stick with the iPhone XR to save yourself a good bit of money. And I'll talk about more of that as far as saving money and the prices for these phones and everything at the end of this video. And of course, at 6.1 inches, the iPhone XR's display is bigger than phones like the iPhone X, which I have right here. You can see side by side the displays. And then also I have the iPhone 11 Pro right here. You can see the display is definitely bigger on the iPhone XR, and it is very noticeable when using the devices as well. And I honestly feel like the size of the iPhone XR, that 6.1 inch size, is the sweet spot in between small and large displays. It's not too small, it's not too big, it feels awesome in the hand and also in my pocket when I'm on the go. This is my preferred size. I like this better than any of the Plus model phones, any of the regular size phones. 6.1 inches to me and to a lot of other people that I've talked to is the perfect size. Now, of course, we cannot talk about the iPhone XR without mentioning the bezels and the overall thickness of the phone. This is another thing that a lot of people originally complained about, and yes, I do prefer the edge-to-edge display with no bezel, of course, but the bezels on the iPhone XR never really bothered me too much. Of course, the bezels aren't as noticeable as the older iPhones like the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, and I feel that if I didn't have like an iPhone 11 Pro or Pro Max or any device with a bezel-less screen, I would not even care or even notice it as much. So if you didn't have like an iPhone 10 or anything after that that's like a flagship phone without the bezels, you're probably not going to care too much about the bezels or the thickness of this phone. And speaking of the thickness, I think that that's worth more complaining about than the bezels on the phone. And it's very thick. I mean, the iPhone XR is the thickest iPhone Apple has ever made aside from the iPhone 11, which has the same thickness as the XR, and that is 8.3 millimeters thick. So you can compare that to the thickness of the iPhone XS Max, which is 7.7 millimeters thick. And of course, the 2019 flagship iPhones got even thicker at 8.1 millimeters. So not a huge difference when comparing to the newer iPhones like the 11 Pro and 11 Pro Max, but still something to take into consideration. Now, of course, we do not have a home button or a headphone jack on the iPhone XR, and those are both pros for me. However, I know that the lack of a headphone jack will still be considered a con to some people out there who are, more on a budget and may not have moved away from wired headphones just yet, or you just use like studio headphones. I know that can be a con, but to me, it is definitely not a con. I prefer not having a headphone jack. But since we have no home button on the iPhone XR, of course, we do have Face ID, and it's super fast and accurate, just like it is on the iPhone 11, iPhone 11 Pro, and 11 Pro Max. Now, some people did claim that Face ID is faster on the iPhone 11, but that's just not the case, at least not for me. iOS 13 is what made Face ID faster to unlock, and since my iPhone XR is running iOS 13, Face ID works flawlessly, and it's definitely faster than it was on iOS 12. As a matter of fact, I'll compare the two right now, and you can see there it's pretty much the same in terms of unlock speed on the iPhone 11 versus the iPhone XR. The iPhone 11 may be like a millisecond faster, more due to the internals, but you're not going to notice a difference at all in day-to-day usage when unlocking the two. And speaking of super fast, the iPhone XR is still super fast in 2020. It's still right on par with even the iPhone 11 Pro Max and the iPhone 11. I find this to be very, very similar in terms of just overall speed and opening up applications, RAM management, things like that. It seems to be just on par with the new 2019 flagship. So definitely no reduction in performance or anything like that with iOS 13, and of course we will have years and years and years of more support for the iPhone XR, so you're going to continue seeing performance improvements, battery improvements, and things like that as Apple continues to optimize the software. And I did also do numerous speed test videos here on the channel when the iPhone XR first came out to give you guys an idea of how quick it is. I compared it to like the iPhone XS, the Note 9, the Galaxy S10e, and others. But aside from the blazing fast performance, another one of the biggest selling points of the iPhone XR is the camera. The camera on the XR offers very, very similar performance to that of the iPhone XS and XS Max, despite only having one lens compared to the dual lens setup on the XS and XS Max. And speaking of the camera, let me tell you guys a little bit more about Skillshare. And don't worry, that correlation between Skillshare and the camera will make sense here in a second. So Skillshare is the go-to place for learning pretty much any and everything you can imagine. They have more than 22,000 classes where you can learn and master creative skills like iOS app development, illustration, web design, photography, and more. And the great thing is they aren't super long either. Most classes on the site are less than 60 minutes, so they are very easy to digest and watch within one sitting. So whether you want to learn a skill to make some extra money by freelancing, or if you want to start a career, or even if you just want to learn stuff because you're just a curious person like I am, Skillshare Premium is exactly what you need in your life. Premium gets you unlimited access to all classes on the site, which includes hands-on projects and feedback from a community of millions, all once again for less than $10 a month when you sign up for their annual plan, which is just a steal for the amount of knowledge you're going to gain. And speaking of knowledge you'll gain, I actually just finished up a class on iPhone photography called How to Take Pro Photos on Your iPhone. And while I consider myself a pretty good photographer as it is, I still learned a couple of new tricks after taking this class, and I think you will too. I also plan on making my own app in the future, so I did take some beginner classes on iOS app development, and I plan on taking the more advanced classes soon. So yeah, if you're interested in joining the millions of creators learning how to create awesome stuff with Skillshare, click the link down in the description below to get 2 free months of premium membership and explore your creativity today. So yeah, the reason the performance from the camera is so similar despite only having one lens is because that one lens here, the 12 megapixel wide angle lens, is the same one found in the iPhone XS and XS Max. It's the same main camera lens found in those flagship phones. Now we don't get the additional telephoto lens, but honestly, for the price of the iPhone XR, that should not be a deal breaker at all for anyone. Plus, I think that portrait shots look even better when taken on the iPhone XR in certain scenarios. Taking photos is great with the iPhone XR, but the real fun is in taking videos. Just like with the iPhone XS and XS Max, the video quality is just incredible. And aside from the iPhone 11, 11 Pro, and 11 Pro Max, it is the best of any smartphone out there right now. You can shoot in 4K 60, but I did find, by the way, that did eat up a lot of storage, and I found this out the hard way. So I wouldn't recommend doing it unless you want to purchase the $10 a month iCloud plan, which gets you 2 terabytes of storage. Otherwise, just stick to 4K 30 or just 1080p. But still, the video quality is just incredible for a smartphone. And Apple's Smart HDR feature is a big reason the camera is so good on the iPhone XR. So this is a software feature that essentially just adds better shadows, highlights, and colors the images and videos better. It's not quite as good as Deep Fusion, which we saw with the new iPhone 11, 11 Pro, and 11 Pro Max, but the overall quality is still fantastic. The only real downside to the iPhone XR's camera is that you can't take portrait photos of objects. You can only take portrait photos of people. However, you can download third-party applications to get that object portrait mode feature on the XR. So it ends up not really being a downside after all. It just won't be in the native camera application, which could be a downside, I guess, to some people. But anyways, let's move on to battery life. So battery life is another major selling point of the iPhone XR. It was and still is a major selling point. And for good reason. I mean, the battery life is easily the top complaint when it comes to smartphones in general. But with the iPhone XR, you never really hear too many complaints about it. And if you saw my giant battery test video with all of the important iPhones on the market right now, you would have seen that the iPhone XR actually lasted longer than the iPhone 11 and the XS Max. And I can't say I'm surprised, because over a year later, the iPhone XR battery has held up much better than any other iPhone that I purchased around the same time that I purchased the XR, including my iPhone XS and XS Max. And I say held up in terms of the overall battery capacity, the battery health, and also just how long it lasts on a day-to-day basis, because believe it or not, I do still test out these phones and put my SIM card in these phones over a year later. So battery life is another major pro for the iPhone XR, and something that will take away your urge to go with something like the iPhone 11 instead. And finally, let's discuss the price of the iPhone XR and if you should buy one in 2020. So the iPhone XR is still selling new on apple.com for $600 for a 64 gigabyte model and $700 for a 128 gigabyte model. And while that is a decent price for the XR, I don't think it's worth it when you can spend just $100 more to get an iPhone 11 with a better camera setup, better performance, and likely an extra year of software support. But since I'm all about getting you guys the best bang for your buck, I highly suggest buying one used. That is an iPhone XR used. You can get one in mint condition for around $400 on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, or wherever you go to buy used iPhones. You can see here there are plenty that sold for just under $400, and most hover around the $420 to $450 price tag. And that is just a fantastic deal. And the great thing is prices will drop even further once the 2020 iPhones get released. Just make sure you guys watch my video on what to do before buying a used iPhone. That way you don't get scammed, and make sure you get, one that's in good condition and things like that. I will have that video linked down in the description below and also up in the cards above. And speaking of the 2020 iPhones, we could see the budget-friendly iPhone released in early 2020 with a price tag similar to what a used iPhone XR is going for right now. But the thing is, it's likely not going to have as good of a camera, or it's not going to have as good of a chip. There's going to be some caveat to it being very cheap. But if you want to wait until that gets released before making a decision, I don't blame you. But as for my outlook right now, I think the iPhone XR is simply the best iPhone to buy in 2020 in terms of value. It's basically an iPhone 11 without the extra camera lens at a very discounted price. Now, of course, if you don't have a $400 to $500 budget, you should watch my video I just recently made on the iPhone 7 Plus. That may be a better option for you. That is definitely a very relevant phone still in 2020. I will also have that linked up in the cards and down in the description below. I love this color, by the way, that matte black. It's just so beautiful. So overall, I love the iPhone XR. It has grown to become one of my favorite iPhones I have. Again, it is the perfect size. It has incredible battery life still over a year later. We have the excellent single camera lens. We have the beautiful color options. I love the red color option here with the XR. And it's just a great phone to buy in 2020. You really cannot do any wrong at all by buying an iPhone XR in 2020. And the good thing is, once again, you aren't missing out on much by going from the iPhone XR XR, or going to the iPhone XR, I should say, instead of the iPhone 11. So now I'm gonna pass the question along to you guys. Do you guys like the iPhone XR? Do you have one? Do you wanna get one? What phone are you gonna trade in to get an iPhone XR? Let me know all of your situations and all of your thoughts about the iPhone XR down in the comments section below. And if you guys did enjoy this year later review on the iPhone XR, I would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss my maybe 2 years later review on the XR to see if it's still holding up in 2021. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.